Welcome to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, you are having a great end to your Thursday, start to your Friday, start to your Memorial Day weekend. And I'm here with my co-host, Stephen Tolbert. Stephen, always a pleasure to be with you again. The Hammer Territory Podcast, part of the Foul Territory Podcast Network. But Stephen, we get to talk about a series win, 2 straight wins for the Braves, a 3-0 win over Chicago. It was a really impressive game overall, once again for the pitching staff, but it's good to talk with you. How are you tonight, sir?
Shawn, what's up, buddy? Yeah, man, it's good to do another one of these with you. Yeah, since last we talked, obviously the team went 2-0 in the last 2 games, so that's obviously improved the mood around the team versus when we talked on Tuesday, where it was pretty bleak. And, they were coming off a pretty brutal stretch of baseball, and just kind of an ugly stretch of baseball, for being honest. But yeah, 2 wins since then. The offense is still, they had a good game on Wednesday, and they had a decent game today. The wind was blowing in Chicago. So, but we'll get to all that in a minute. But, yeah, 2 wins, the pitching staff has been incredible, which is going to be the main topic tonight. But two wins is 2 wins, and it's better than 2 losses. And, it's good to get a series win when things were looking kind of bleak, and off to Pittsburgh we go.
Absolutely. And, it's just good to get this series win. And, this is 4 out of 6 now against Chicago. As you pointed out on Twitter/X, we won 4 out of the 6 games. We have a tiebreaker for Chicago, who I believe is right there with us right now. I want to say, in that wild card mix, I think they're 5th right now. We're 4th. Long way to go. But this is this is one of the better teams in the National League, a team in Chicago who legitimately has a chance at a postseason berth. And the Braves were right, did a good job. Again, this should have been a series sweep, but they got the job done on Wednesday and Thursday behind some excellent pitching performances. And that's where we'll start, because the story of the game today was the fact that AJ Smith-Shawver made his 2024 season debut for the Braves. One of the Braves' top 2 pitching prospects last year, showed a bit of a glimpse of just the overall talent that he has. Someone who could be a top of the rotation starter in time. He looked impressive at times last year, including in the playoffs against the Phillies. But on Thursday, Stephen, we were really interested to see how he looked after going through, some changes, some adjustments down in AAA. He had his struggles at times this year so far in AAA, but what really stood out to me in his start today, 4 1/3 innings, 4 strikeouts, no earned runs. He got up to 99. The velocity was up. He carried it into the 4th inning. It seemed like it kind of tailed off a bit in the 5th inning, but his velocity was up and he was able to carry it into the game. He also kept the ball in the ballpark, which obviously was a great thing, and he seemed to have good command of the strike zone. He seemed to be throwing several of his pitches for strikes at different parts in the count. So his overall understanding of his stuff and how to pitch, he was a pitcher instead of a thrower, and he was able to do it at 99 miles per hour plus with good breaking stuff. He looked really, really impressive for his season debut.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously everybody wanted to see what he looked like, what the 2024 version looks like versus last year. Last year he came up, he had flashes. The big thing we saw last year was he had a really hard time holding velocity throughout a game. He would start out throwing 96, 97 in the first inning, and then usually by the 3rd or 4th inning he was down to 92, 93 pretty consistently. And you're just such a different pitcher. I mean, just the level of command. We've talked about this before with Tyler Matzik, but like the level of command you have to have at 92, 93 versus 97, 98, 99 is leagues apart. I mean, you just got to be an elite command guy when you're throwing 92, 93. So the fact that he was he's added velocity. He was pretty consistently throwing 97, 98, 99 today. And the fact that he was able to hold it. He threw, I think he threw 3 in his last inning of work. I think he threw like 3 98-mile-an-hour fastballs and 1 99-mile-an-hour fastball in his last inning. So that's tremendous. Our buddy Garrett Spain over at Battery Power was talking about that's been one of his bigger developments this year is he's added muscle. He's bigger, he's stronger. So he's added velocity, but he's added some endurance where he can maintain that velocity. And that's what they had seen in the minors. And Brad did a whole show with Garrett. You should go check it out. It's on the podcast feed about the minor league system. If you haven't listened to that show, go listen to it. It's a really good episode. Um, but yeah, that was the big thing for him is can he hold his velocity because he's just so much easier to pitch at 98, 99. I mean, that's an obvious statement, but when you could throw that hard, you don't have to be as sharp everywhere else. You can get away with some hanging breaking balls. You can get away with some iffy command. You can get away with leaving some pitches over the middle of the plate just because it's just hard to hit. And that's what we saw today. The wind was blowing in. Chicago's a lineup that's kind of going through a dry spell, not too dissimilar from the Braves. And so, he definitely got a nice draw in terms of when to make his debut, but 4 innings, 4 shutout or I think 4 2/3 shutout innings, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. You'll take it, especially for his first start. But the stuff looked good. And, I'm interested to see what they do if how they play with the rotation, if he's up for a little bit and gets a run here, if he's gonna, go back and forth. We'll see what they do. But yeah, it was a really good outing by him. It was nice to see, and it was nice to see the things that he struggled with last year are the things that he is. You can clearly see the improvement that he's made this year.
Absolutely. And just like AJ Smith-Shawver did on Thursday, the Braves had a big need to fill when it came to their rotation, and AJ Smith-Shawver delivered. Well, if you need a source to deliver your daily nutrition, check out AG1 Supplement today.
Kratz here from FT. I wasn't feeling as focused as I wanted to be and heard some buzz about AG1. Since drinking AG1 daily, I've felt energized, locked in, and ready to hit the day.
Braun here. That's because AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create a better, smarter way to elevate your baseline health. Kratz, not only did I replace my multivitamin with AG1, but I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. That's a big deal for me.
I recommend AG1 to fam and friends because it's tested for 950 contaminants and NSF certified for sport.
Kratz, we're both traveling a lot too, and those travel packs are clutch. I drink AG1 daily to support gut health so that we can dominate the day. So if there's one product to recommend to elevate your health, it's AG1, and that's why we're excited to welcome them as a new partner to the FT network. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/Val. That's drinkag1.com/Val. Go check it out.
So, Stephen, building off this performance, Spencer Strider goes down, obviously, so he's not an option for the rest of the year. Whatever the Braves may do at the trade deadline, we'll wait and see. Obviously, the Braves had a natural first option to go with Bryce Elder, who, last year was great in the first half, struggled in the second half, but struggled in spring training. He struggled once again, in his, a few starts that he's had this year. Bryce Elder just right now does not seem to be a viable option for the rotation. So the Braves have this open spot in the rotation. And of course, as we're going to discuss a little bit later on the episode, going into Thursday, they had a need for a starter on Thursday as well as Friday. But AJ Smith-Shawver, with some other moves that have been made in the minor leagues, AJ Smith-Shawver's performance on Thursday, and it even seemed as if this may have been the thought before he started, he could now get an extended look. And Thursday certainly offered promise and validation that he should get a few more starts in that rotation spot the Braves have open.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the question, right? They had moves that they had to make because of the doubleheader and because they wanted to get Elder back in AAA just because he hasn't looked very good. So there was some necessity to this week's moves. It wasn't just purely because AJ was, blowing them away at AAA and was clearly ready for a call up. This was, a product of necessity more than anything else. But in saying that, he clearly has the highest upside of any of the candidates for the 5-star, for this 5 spot in the rotation, whether it's Dylan Dodd or Alan Winans or Darius Vines or Bryce Elder. Like, none of those guys have the ceiling that AJ has. So, and he's clearly improved on some of the areas that he was weak in last year. His numbers weren't great at AAA, and that's that's part of it. And he definitely got some good fortune today with the wind blowing in. There were some balls that maybe would have left the yard if not for that. So, he's not perfect. He's certainly not a finished product, but relative to the other options in that spot, yeah, I mean, he's clearly got the highest upside. I don't know how much more they want him in AAA. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Obviously with Elder being optioned, he's got to stay down there for 15 days unless somebody goes on the IL. So this could be, I mean, this could be an extended run for AJ where he gets 3 or 4 starts and if he grabs hold and does well, he might just keep the job. I'm sure the Braves would love that. So it will be interesting to see what they do. Tomorrow the Braves need another starter, so there's going to have to be some sort of decision made in the next 12 hours about who's going to start tomorrow, and that might give us some indication of what they're thinking. But the fifth starter job is kind of an open competition right now, for being honest. And AJ looked good today. We'll see what they do going forward.
Absolutely. And the thing, though, that stands out is that, yes, the Braves certainly need that fifth starter role to be filled. But, Stephen, this pitching staff just keeps humming along. Brad did a great job. If you haven't listened to the Hammer Territory podcast after Wednesday's game, in which, Max Fried went 5 perfect innings. He got the complete game. Did a great job just giving the bullpen a rest. He was outstanding. AJ Smith-Shawver was outstanding. But what's really starting to emerge, we've talked about the fact that, over this stretch, the Braves pitching staff has been good. But that stretch is starting to expand. We talked about it for the past few weeks. We talked about it for a month. It's really been the whole season. And, Stephen, when you look at the numbers, this Braves pitching staff is arguably top 5 in baseball. I think second in ERA now in the NL, 4th overall in MLB. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the numbers that I saw. But the big thing that stands out is that it's the starting rotation. Each and every one of your, regular members, Fried, Morton, Sale, Lopez, each and every one of them have had outstanding stretches so far this year. AJ Smith-Shawver hopefully will be able to build off this performance. But what also stood out after, some struggles on Monday, Stephen, this Braves bullpen over 9 innings against the Cubs between Tuesday and Thursday allowed only 2 runs. And you saw everybody pitch. Joe Jimenez. You saw Pierce Johnson pitch, Raisel Iglesias. So overall, we're not just talking about one part of the Braves pitching staff. It as a whole, the quality of its depth is really showing up, and it's great to see that happen against quality competition like the Cubs.
Yeah, they look great. And we talked about it on Tuesday that, the key for this team right now is when they pitch like unbelievably well, they win. And in the last 2 games, the Braves gave up 2 runs total over 2 games. And so obviously they won those 2 games. Now on Wednesday's game, the offense obviously showed up in a big way, scoring 9 runs. First time they had scored 9 runs in over a month. And obviously today the wind was blowing in. Offense was a little harder to come by. But again, today they pitched a shutout. I think it's their 8th shutout of the year as a team. So when they pitch like this, they win. The question for this team, and we talked about it on Tuesday, and I'll talk about it again now. The question is, like, when you don't get that elite level pitching, can you still win games? When your starter gives up 3 runs, your bullpen gives up 2 runs, like, can you cover that up? And, when other teams score runs against your pitching, how well do you cover that stuff up? That's still the question. Like, the offense still needs to be more consistent. Even in this series, they won the series, but they had like 2 hits the whole series with a runner in scoring position or something like that. It was like 2 for 26 or something like that. Now, again, that's having that many opportunities is a good sign. So you could read that both ways. But yeah, the offense, you still need the offense to be more consistent. But when this team pitches and when this team gets elite level pitching like it has, it's going to win its fair share of games. The pitching is just so good. Like you said, I mean, the Braves, even without Strider, I mean, the 4 guys the Braves have in the rotation, if AJ is ready to take a step and be that 5th man, you could add him into that equation as well. The Braves are still incredibly talented there. And then the bullpen is in really deep. 7, 8 guys that are really quality. Plus Ray Kerr is still in Gwinnett. They're going to get him back at some point. He's been fantastic. So yeah, the depth on this pitching staff has just been absurd. We talked about it all winter. Alex, the thing he wanted to do was add high level, high quality depth and really have a full 13-man pitching staff. And that's what he's done. And it's been fantastic. And that pitching has saved the Braves bacon. I can't even explain how. I mean, if the Braves weren't pitching like they have been the last month, they would be in a much, much worse shape than they are. That pitching staff has just been nails for over a month now.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned also, I believe it was last week, we talked about the fact that along with the pitching, the defense has stood out as being a strength as well. So two of the three biggest facets of the game, pitching and defense, have been right there for the Braves, as it's a reason why they're now 29 and 18. When you look at the overall production of Atlanta, you see the reason why they have a winning record, why they're 10 games over 500, still less than 50 games into the season. And it's again because of the fact that their pitching and defense have been so good. And one player that I think has, contributed to that, one player who I definitely think has added to the overall defensive upside of this team is Jared Kelenic. And of course, he hit a home run to give the Braves the lead that would last, but also their first run of the day on Thursday. Loves hitting, in Wrigley Field. If you go back to last year, he hit that 482-foot shot in Wrigley Field. But I want to spend a bit of time talking about him, Stephen, because it was great to see him put the ball in play, with hard contact, and to see him hit a home run. I believe his fourth of the season. Maybe it was his third or fourth of the season. But I do want to bring him up because I definitely think that he's been a positive value so far, at least on the defensive end. But I also think it's worth discussing kind of 50 games in, where is the opinion on Jared Kelenic? I think overall, him in left field is a positive value because he does add good defense. But Stephen, I'm trying to find some glimmer of hope, something to say, okay, yes, he's struggling, but this number or that number may indicate, reason to have faith that he'll get better in time. I'm sure as time goes on, he'll be a bit better. It's going to be hard not to be. But I will say, despite his home run, offensively, when it comes to Jared Kelenic, you hope that this is the start of a good streak moving forward. But right now, when it comes to his performance at the plate, the overall results are pretty in line with the expected results, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for encouragement.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he homered today, and that he hit a ball very hard. I mean, he hit it to the teeth of the wind and still got it out. And it's no joke in Wrigley, as hard as that wind can blow. So he's got, like, in terms of his raw skill, he's got tremendous talent. I mean, this guy was like a top 5 prospect in baseball like 2 years ago. So, he's got unbelievable raw skills, which is why the Braves took on quite a bit of money to get him. Now they have him for 5 years, and he's got minor league options, which is obviously helpful. So if he, even if you do have to send him down, if he struggles so much, then you have that option to do so. But he's got tons of raw talent. But yes, if we're being objective about it, at the plate so far in 2024, he's been very bad. I mean, there's really no other way to sugarcoat it. His expected numbers are down in, like, kind of where you would expect if pitchers were still hitting. That's kind of where they lived. I remember the last years that pitchers hit, Max Fried had like an expected OBA of like 270. And right now, Jared Kelenic has an expected OBA in the 260s. So that's very bad. There's no sugarcoating it. His defense has been exceptionally good. He's a fantastic defender. The problem for him is he plays left field. And, if you're playing shortstop, or you're playing center field, or even right field, or maybe third base, you can produce enough defensive value where your offense doesn't matter that much, especially at shortstop, catcher, and center field, the critical defensive positions. At left field, it's much harder to do that. There's just only so much value you're ever going to extract defensively in left field. Typically speaking, you need your left fielder to hit, to be valuable. And if they're not hitting, you typically replace them with somebody who is going to hit, because it's an offensive driven position. And to this point, Kelenic has been very poor offensively. He strikes out a ton. He's got like a 34% strikeout rate, which is very, very, very high. He's got a very low walk rate. I think he's got 6 walks all year. So, like I said, the expected numbers are not great. He hasn't been good. I mean, he had a good start, but other than that, he has not been that good. And, it is what it is. The Braves are probably going to give him a decent leash. None of this would be as important if the entire offense was hitting better. If all the guys that were supposed to be hitting great were, then this would be much less of an issue. But when the whole offense struggles, then, the guys at the bottom who are really, really struggling, they get noticed more. So that's part of it too. But yeah, he hasn't been great. There's no numbers I can spit out that paints a rosier picture than what it is. He hasn't been good at the plate. He's been very good defensively. I don't know that that's going to be enough to keep his spot I would not be stunned. Now, obviously, homer today, so he's going to get plenty of leash to see if he can get hot. But, if it continues at this pace, I wouldn't be surprised to see Duvall a little bit more. I also wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe go get somebody at the deadline if neither guy is really taken off. Outfielders are pretty easy to acquire. So we'll see what they do. He's got a ton of potential. He's got a ton of talent. He's really good defensively. But if we're being honest, they need more out of him from with the bat, because that's, you put guys in left field to hit, and they need somebody that's going to hit a little bit more. And if it's him, great. He's got tons of talent. He can do it. If it's not him, it becomes a little more interesting to see what they do.
Absolutely. And I think that the key that you hit on there is that, yes, you have a clear area where he adds value. And for the Braves, if their offense is at its normal level, as you mentioned, at shortstop, at left field, if a guy's adding mainly defensive value at those two areas, because again, the defense was pretty bad last year, but the defense is pretty good this year. Arcia as well as Kelenic have done very well. But if the rest of the offense is not pulling its weight, if it's not doing what it needs to do, then those two areas, shortstop and left field, those become the prime areas where if the Braves need to go do some type of move to get an offensive upgrade, it makes sense that those would be the top two areas to look at. I'm not saying to expect that or anything like that, but if we go, further into the season where Arcia and Kelenic are offering, or they're kind of where they are now, a month or so from now, then maybe that conversation changes. But as we are recording right now, I will say this. We're now going into the weekend. Of course, the Braves will be going to Pittsburgh to face the Pittsburgh Pirates. But the biggest storyline of the weekend will be Sean Murphy watch. When might he be activated to potentially join the Braves? And the thought was that he would do it on the next homestand. But Stephen, as we're doing this recording, Sean Murphy went deep again. His second home run on this rehab assignment, second home run of the week. Of course, he hit a 450-foot bomb on Tuesday, in his first at bat. But hey, his next start, he's hit another home run. So he clearly is ready. Getting him back into the lineup in a series where it's definitely an opportunity for you to be able to sweep or get the series win. We talked about it on Tuesday. It's the biggest storyline out there. If we can get Sean Murphy back, and if he's ready to produce, that is going to be such a huge boost to the lineup. But that certainly is the biggest storyline to watch over the weekend.
Yeah, call him up. Get him up here. The Braves need it. The Braves need some offense. No, I'll be interested what they do. When you have an oblique injury, obviously how you swing the bat is the biggest thing they're looking for. And he's hit 2 home runs in 2 games, so the bat looks pretty good. As long as he's healthy. I mean, here's the thing about position players, especially like catchers who have been catching bullpens and live BP. Like, once you got your timing, you're good. For pitchers, rehab assignments can take 2-3 weeks because of how much rest they need in between starts. But position players can knock out a whole rehab assignment in a few days if they get enough at bats. So, I would be a little surprised to see him this weekend just because he's only 2 games into a rehab assignment. But, I think it's probably more likely that we see him at the beginning of next week in Atlanta. But hey, if they want to call him up, I'm all about it. The Braves could use the boost offensively. I'm sure Travis d'Arnaud would love a little more help. Chadwick Trump has been really, really good behind the plate, throwing out runners, calling games. He's been tremendous. He deserves credit for some of this, elite pitching that the Braves have had. But offensively, obviously, he's a third catcher. I mean, he's very, very limited. He got 2 hits today, which is, stealing candy from a baby. I mean, it's found money at that point anytime he gives you anything offensively. So I don't know what they're going to do. I would guess they're going to bring Murphy back on Monday. But we'll see. It wouldn't stun me to see him in Pittsburgh. The fact that he would have to get on a plane, I think if the Braves were playing at home this weekend, I think there's a better chance that they would call him up. But being on the road and then coming back home Monday, I think Monday's what they're going to end up doing. But yeah, 2 home runs in 2 games on a rehab assignment, especially with the offensive problems that the Braves are having, that's enticing. And we know, I mean, we saw last year, especially in the first half, Murph has got unbelievable offensive potential. I mean, he destroys baseball. He hits the ball as hard as anybody in baseball, anybody on the team. As hard as Matt hits the ball, as hard as Acuna hits the ball, Sean Murphy hits the ball just as hard as any of those guys. And so I'd love to have him back, but my guess is it's going to be Monday.
Which will be perfectly fine, and yeah, because at the very least, why not just let him keep building off this success, get a couple more games behind the plate, and be able to really, put a good, performance in place as far as the rehab assignment goes. Then you can get him right back into the lineup, starting next week when they arrive in Atlanta. But the other thing that stands out is, we could talk all day long about the potential of what could happen with Sean Murphy. One thing we do know is that there is an opening when it comes to who is going to be on the mound to start the game on Friday for the Braves. Bailey Falter, left-hander for Pittsburgh, will be going against Atlanta, but on the mound for the Braves is to be determined at this point in time. Now, Darius Vines is with the big league club, and I'm pretty sure he's not been used in his time, since he's been called up on Monday. But the thing is that typically you would see, the Braves at times, they can announce who they will do and they'll wait till the next day. But there was an expectation that we know by now who was going to start on Friday. We don't know that as of yet. So the Braves could go with Vines, but they also potentially, I believe, Dylan Dodd, Alan Winans, from AAA, those could be options as well. It remains to be seen what the Braves are going to do for Friday's start. Steven, as of right now, what are your thoughts kind of who would make sense to be on the mound for the Braves, and what direction you'll think they'll go to fill Friday's starter position?
Yeah, it was a bit weird that they didn't announce after the game. Everybody, they called up Vines. Now, obviously, the reason they called up Vines was to have some length in the bullpen in case something got crazy during the Cub series, and it almost did. Right, Charlie had a rough start to Monday's game and almost had to be pulled in the second inning. But the expectation was Vines was up to pitch one of these two games, either today or Friday. And so when they didn't announce it after the game today, people kind of raised an eyebrow. They said they're going to talk about it on the plane. It leads you to believe that maybe the guy who's going to start tomorrow is not on the team yet, and they're going to make another move tomorrow. I don't know. If they did that, my guess would be probably Dylan Dodd. I was looking earlier. Ray Kerr technically hasn't thrown a pitch for Gwinnett yet since he got sit down at the beginning of the week. The Braves would have to make an IL move to get him back up because he hasn't been down 15 days. But if somebody went on the IL, Ray Kerr could come up and potentially start tomorrow. So my guess is going to be Vines, but the fact that they didn't announce it today is definitely weird after the game. So, if they're going to make a move, it's like you said, it could be Dodd, it could be Winans. If they put somebody on the IL, it could be Elder or Ray Kerr, because then that would waive the 15-day rule. So they could bring either of those guys back if they wanted to. So we'll see what they do if they've got, you never know if they've got a nagging injury somewhere on the pitching staff and use an IL trip to maybe get a guy up earlier than otherwise he would have been able to. So we'll see what they do. My guess is it's going to be Vines, Winans, or Dodd. They'll just make a typical roster move tomorrow and then go from there. And then once you get past tomorrow's game, the rotation kind of levels back out again from the doubleheader and all the fallout from the rain out and stuff. So it'll get easier after this week. But that's my guess. Is it going to be Vines or one of the AAA guys tomorrow?
Absolutely. And so, when you look at the Braves schedule, when you look at their calendar, typically throughout the season, over the past several years, when you've seen the Braves play Pittsburgh, it's been one of the expectations. Okay, this is a series where if Atlanta needs to get right, this is an opportunity to do it. And this is especially the case this year because Pittsburgh, I think to the surprise of some, maybe many, the fact that they've had Paul Skeens as well as Jared Jones. I mean, if you were to talk about a duo of young pitchers on the same team this year who have really turned some eyes with success, it would be those two. The Braves actually are going to avoid both of them in this series. On Friday, you've got Bailey Falter for Pittsburgh against whoever the Braves will name as their starter. Saturday, Ronaldo Lopez versus Mitch Keller, and then Sunday you've got Chris Sale versus Martin Perez. So the Braves have an opportunity to really be able to again either get a series win or be able to get a series sweep. But to me, what stands out, Stephen, is that Atlanta needs to have something when it comes to their offense step up. Something last year or over the past 2 years that has clearly been their identity. That's either Ronald Acuna Jr. or Matt Olson having a big series, the Braves' ability to hit left-handers, especially, maybe a big series from an Adam Duvall or Travis d'Arnaud having another great weekend. Something about the Braves' offense that has clearly been a big source of their success in the past. It seems like a good weekend for that something to show up. I can't necessarily put my finger on what exactly that would be, but this seems like a good time for Atlanta to really get going offensively because they're ninth in Major League Baseball in terms of production against left-handed pitchers. They face some decent left-handers this weekend, but two pitchers in Falter and Perez that they should be able to have success against. I think that this is a good opportunity for this Atlanta offense to really get going, but again, it's got to start for the top of the order.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely catch a break, playing Pittsburgh and not having to play, have to go against Skeens or Jared Jones. Those two guys are nasty and both throw, 100 miles an hour. So playing a 3-game series and missing both of those guys is a nice break. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this is kind of the series where it gets going. Bailey Falter, Braves fans will remember from Philadelphia. He played in Philly for a couple years and is with Pittsburgh now. Kind of saw a soft tossing lefty. The Braves have typically destroyed those guys. Last year they just mashed lefties. They had, with Riley, Murphy, Acuna, Ozuna, Arcia, left-handed Ozzy, they can really stack up against lefties. We'll see, what Austin Riley, Sean Murphy's statuses are for this weekend. Riley's been out forever. Murphy's been out forever. So we'll see. I'm not necessarily expecting either guy back, but even without those guys, they still got Acuna, they still got Duvall, they still got Ozuna, they still got right-handed Ozzy. They can do damage against left-handers if they get going. So, and these are two left-handers who aren't, no disrespect, but these aren't two of the, greatest pitchers you'll ever see. So it is an opportunity. You get a break not seeing the best guys from Pittsburgh. It's an opportunity to really get the offense going. The Braves have played well in Pittsburgh the last few years. It seems like they play the Pirates pretty well. So it'd be great to see. It'd be great to see Acuna get going. And, the Braves need him to be, they don't need 2023 Ronald, but they need more than they've gotten so far. They need him to be a little more consistent. He's just, it seems like he takes one step forward and two steps back. He had that 3-hit game on Monday and against San Diego, and then kind of had a rough series against Chicago. Didn't do much. So we'll see. We'll see if he can get going. It's a good opportunity to do so. It would be tremendous to get the offense going. I've said it before. The pitching is not going to throw 7 shutout innings every game. What they did the last 2 games was fantastic. Giving up 2 runs total in 2 games, but that's not sustainable. You got to be able to win games 5-4. You got to be able to win a 7-5 game. And that's kind of what this team was built on. It was built on, a tremendous offense to cover up anytime the pitching isn't at its best. So that's what everybody's still waiting on. Obviously the record are still good. The team's still in good shape in terms of the standings. Philadelphia is as hot as any team I've ever seen. That's a whole separate discussion that we can have later, but there's still so much baseball left. I mean, the Braves were down 10 games, a couple of years ago against the Mets. Everybody remembers at this point and chased them down. So there's plenty of baseball left. That's not a concern at all. Just got to get the offense going. Just get the top guys going, get Acuna going, and everybody will feel a lot better about this team. And, it is a good team, but it's having to rely too much on elite pitching right now for my comfort level. I want to see them be able to win games when the pitching isn't, elite, because you can't ask for that all the time. Your pitching is not going to be elite all the time. We need a little bit more balance, and there needs to be a little bit more balance in the team where the offense is pulling some weight. So hopefully that starts in Pittsburgh.
It's kind of crazy, how, as much as things change, they stay the same, Stephen. Brad Rowland, fellow podcast host with Hammer Territory, he pointed out that, 47 games into last year, the Braves were 29-18. 47 games into this year, the Braves were 29-18. But if you go to this time last year, the Braves had just gotten, word, or, we were fresh off knowing that both Kyle Wright as well as Max Fried, coming off their incredible 2022 seasons, both those pitchers were going to be out for a long period of time due to injury. So, there was, efforts by the Braves to get their pitching staff going. But at this time last year, the Braves offense was humming along at a, historic pace. May was a bit of a struggle, but it was still a good offense. Well, you come a year later, it's a bit of a 180. It's the Braves offense that is awaiting some key members to get back, Sean Murphy and Austin Riley. And yes, even though the pitching staff has lost Spencer Strider, though, the pitching is what stands out as the clear strength of this team. But I say all that to say this. I would much rather bet on the offense getting back to the level that we expect from it to be at than I would the pitching be there. I'm like you. I'm not saying this pitching staff is going to continue as good as it has been to start the year throughout the whole year. But if our pitching can at least stay near the top of the league and our offense, you naturally think will get better. Like I say, even though we have the same record, it's a bit of a different story this year compared to last year. But again, I would be willing to bet on our offense being able to get back to at least a top of the league level. And if you can have it get back going then, and we could take off like we could in June, I think it's a great thing. So to anyone who's still really concerned about this team, again, we're record-wise right now, we are right where we were last year. The pitching has been incredible. And you have to think, especially with getting Riley and Murphy back, this offense is going to get going once again.
Yeah, and the calendar's turning to June, and we know, I don't know why, but this, once we get to summer, this team goes bananas, especially offensively. So, maybe that's the magic elixir again, and the calendar flipping and getting some guys back will be the difference. And you're right. Listen, this team, has a bunch of individuals on it who are underperforming, versus what they normally do offensively. And if you're going to bet on anything, the best bet is that at some point they're going to break out. Like Acuna is not going to have this kind of year all year. Olson's not going to have this kind of year all year. When Riley gets back, he's going to get going at some point. Ozzy, same thing. Like the smart bet is that these guys are going to break out of this, and their numbers at the end of the year are going to look similar to what they normally do. The Rays just need to see it. They just need, you're not guaranteed anything in baseball. So, that's just what they're waiting on. That's what everybody's waiting on. Just waiting on the offense to look normal. I don't think the pitching is bad. I know I say the pitching is going to regress. I don't mean the pitching is going to regress to a bad level. I mean, lately they are pitching at like a 1 ERA level lately, and that's not going to continue. That's what I mean by regress. Regress for them is still going to be a very, very good pitching staff, but they're going to have games where they give up 3 or 4 runs. Can the Braves win those games is really the question. And that's going to come down to the offense. And lately, if the pitching staff gives up 3 or 4 runs, the Braves can't win the game. And that's what we got to fix. That's what we got to change. And that's what I'm waiting for. A little bit more balance to the team where you're not so reliant on one part of it that if that part doesn't show up, you just can't win. You don't want to be there. So that's what I'm waiting for. Hopefully it starts in Pittsburgh. And we'll see. And hopefully pretty soon the Braves can get healthy and get Riley and Murph back. That will help tremendously.
And it's always more fun. I'll be honest with you. It's always more enjoyable to talk out, discuss where, your team's struggling after a few wins instead of after losing 5 out of 6 games. So that's why there's a much more positive vibe to this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast with me and Steven versus Tuesday. But can't thank you enough again for all the support, and definitely for y'all tuning in. We're coming up on about a month of having the Hammer Territory podcast back and going. Hopefully better times are ahead. And also certainly want to say, with Memorial Day weekend being here, want to wish everyone a very safe and enjoyable a long weekend for your friends and your family from us here at Hammer Territory. But Steven, as we wrap up this edition of the show, Brad Rowland, another special guest host, will be back on Sunday. Anything you'd like to add as we head to the long weekend and the Braves hopefully getting the offense rolling in Pittsburgh?
Nope. Everybody have a happy and safe Memorial Day weekend. Go Braves. We'll be here to cover it all. Like you said, Brad will be back on Sunday, I think, with another guest host. Scott gets back pretty soon. And then we're off into the summer, and we'll be here for the whole thing. So we appreciate it as always.
Absolutely. For Stephen Tolbert, who you can find at B_outliers on Twitter, myself at StatsSAC, at Hammer Territory across all forms of social media, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Make sure you check out all the great content across that family of podcasts at Foul Territory, but obviously Hammer Territory as well for all Braves fans. Make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast. That's where we'll be for free. Just hit the subscribe button and you'll get the latest content when it's available. Again, my name is Shawn Coleman here with Stephen Tolbert. Brad Rowland will be back with a special guest on Sunday, but until then, have a great weekend. Go Braves. We'll talk to you again here on the Hammer Territory podcast.